I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my face. Work a job every day till your dreams fade away. Like a card, never change, play the game that we say. I need a break. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. Face on when I chase like that. Yeah, I play so strong with a knife in the back. I'ma swing home run like a baseball bat. Gonna see me rise if you hate on that. I don't play both sides, doing me no cap. I'ma ride or die for my dreams on tap. I'ma fly real high, you ain't see me slack. No, it's not how you fall, it's how you get right back up. That's how you get tough. Calluses on my hands so rough, yeah, I call your bluff. I'm not the one, mess with me and come down with none. Cause I'm so done, you had your fun. And now you're gonna face down the barrel of the gun. Cause I got a full clip with your name on it. But I'ma let you slide cause you ain't worth it. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. I'm staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on.
Welcome to the latest Storytime stream. We are here. We're going to be doing a live reading of Shield Hero Book 6, Rise of the Shield Hero Book 6, by Ayanko Usagi. It is a false name, because, well, it's a female name and we don't know the real identity of said writer. So it is a pen name. But it is available through One Piece Books, and we will be doing them today, doing the live read today, and also for the next 3 weeks. We'll be live reading from this series, so it's going to be containing spoilers. So if you have watched at least Season 1, we're expecting you have at least watched Season 1. This is going to be spoilers for Season 2, which is the upcoming series release on the 4th. Be exactly 3 weeks from yesterday. So we are going to be doing some live reading today of that. But before that, we want to promote our own book series. Demon Blade Book 1 is available now digitally and in print through Amazon.com. You can get it worldwide. So this is a unique way of people being able to get the book and pick up and read. It is a wonderful manga series that we have put together, and we hope you all get to enjoy. Till then, let's get on with our title. So, yeah, I'm going to try and get a better image here for the Shield Hero Season 2 premiere. But, we're going to be starting, and it is a very long amount of reading we're going to be doing today. But we're starting here with Prologue, Al Maria Superstitions. The rhythmic sound of crashing waves, soothing as I gaze the blue ocean and sky. The beach is so perfect. Hard to believe that the ocean is so rough out there. Mr. Naofumi, isn't there still some storm raging offshore? We were at Resort Island called Cal Maria, but we weren't there to relax. The island was in the middle of an activation phenomenon, so we come to reap its benefits. The activation event was something similar to what happens in a scheduled MMORPG events. It was a set period of time where the amount of experience points received by players was dramatically increased. So while the phenomenon was occurring, you would receive more and more experience than usual. Same amount of battling. Experience points seemed like such a strange idea, but I've gotten used to it. Completely different world after all. See, if you squint that way out the horizon, you can just make it out. Some black clouds. Strange to see them. But it was so far away that I couldn't be sure. Yes, I did see a dark line over the ocean. Waves looked higher out there. The breeze was wet. Raftalia seemed to know a lot about the ocean. Well, I am from a fishing village. I have a sense of for these things. I guess. Oh yeah. Why were we relaxing, watching the waves roll by? Well, we did have a fair amount of time to kill until we could act on the next phase of our plans. To explain what I was doing was completely in a completely new world. I should explain from the beginning. My name is Naofumi Itowani. I used to live in Japan as a member of the normal modern society. I used to be a university student with an otaku tendency. One day, I stumbled into a local library, kill time, and found an old looking book called The Records of the Four Holy Weapons. I started flipping through it, and before I knew it, was happening, I lost consciousness, woke back up in the world. Apparently summoned there to serve the role of one of the characters that had been described in the book, The Shield Hero. The book had told the story of a disastrous phenomenon called the Waves of Destruction. Waves were threatening to destroy the world. Standing against it were four heroes, each summoned from another world, each wielding a legendary weapon. The weapons were the sword, the spear, the bow, and of course, the shield. Sure, the shield doesn't really count as a weapon per se. Nevertheless, that's the role I was summoned to play. But the book wasn't complete. Text continued just until the section detailing the shield hero. From that point on, all subsequent pages were blank. That's pretty much how I ended up here. Anyway, this world was very different from my own. People here were accrued levels and experience points, as if it were a game. Whether you battled and defeated monsters, you were awarded a certain amount of experience points, which would raise your abilities level. They call the system status magic, which I concentrated on it. I could see various status attributes and their values spelled out before me in midair. It was an interesting world. Rewarded you in the direct proportions of your efforts. The shield hero was really a defense specialist. I was only able to defeat monsters indirectly. If I didn't have a party members to battle with, I was severely limited in what I could achieve. Essentially impossible for me to defeat a monster on my own. But it wasn't all bad. Legendary Shield had a whole host of abilities, skills that I could use. Legendary Shield itself grew more powerful by absorbing monsters and various materials, and it could transform into other powerful shields. The plan was to level up and grow as powerful as I could before the waves came. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out that way. The country that summoned us, Elmermac, clung to historical vendetta against the shield hero. Because of the persecution I experienced, I was unable to recruit party members for my own. Eventually, I was able to recruit someone, but just when I thought I earned her trust and appreciation, she betrayed me. I was framed for a crime and sent out onto the streets, penniless, alone. It was a very dark time, but eventually I found a party member I actually purchased. She was a slave when I was bought her, so she didn't really have a choice in the matter. Nevertheless, together we were able to face the first wave of destruction and came out of the ordeal alive. Doesn't sound very good, wasn't, but it's all the truth. The slave's name was Raptalia. She was young, girl. I purchased her for a pendly sum, forced her to fight monsters on my behalf. What should we do next? Can't go to the open ocean until the storm blows over. I guess just kill time here on the island. Girl next to me on the beach, one who now cared for me sincerely, Raftalia. She appeared to be around 18 years old. Truth, younger than. She was a demi-human, type of person that existed in this world. There were different races of demi-human, among which she was the Tanuki type. You think of her as a girl with Tanuki ears and puffy tail, pretty close to what she looks like. She had a symmetrical face, framed with smooth red hair. Her skin was white, fine like porcelain. 10 out of 10 people would call her beautiful. Demi-humans grew differently from normal humans. Even if they were young children, their bodies grew in proportions to their level, not their age. Because Raftalia started battling with when she was only a small girl, her body grew into a young woman nearly before my eyes. This unique way of demi-humans grew up meant that she was actually younger than she appeared. When the first wave of destruction washed over the world, it took Raftalia's village and family with it. In ensuing chaos, she was captured by slave traders and forced into servitude, leading on the extended period of darkness in her life. In the end, I bought her as a slave. The rest is history. After I was betrayed and framed, persecuted, I lost the ability to trust others. I was eventually able to put my trust in a slave, knowing that she had no option but to tell me the truth. They could never betray me. It may seem ridiculous, but Ralph Talia was eventually set free from her life as a slave. Then she voluntarily became a slave again, when trust earned my trust. I might have lost faith in humanity, but there wasn't so far gone. I could witness such a sincere devotion remain unmoved. Now, as my most trusted ally, very serious person. Her sense of purpose was her highest priority, one that she never forgets. When my temper gets out of control, my language gets rough, she's always there to reel me back in. Because the loss and suffering she's experienced during the first wave, she was extremely dedicated in fighting them. She didn't want anything else to endure, anyone else to endure the hardships that she forced to suffer. Put it plainly, I respected her very much. Philo! What? Called out, I called out to Philo. He was just down the beach, swimming and playing in the water. Going to head over to the market. What do you want to do? I want to keep swimming. Fine, swim all you want. Okay. Philo was the second friend I made after Raftalia. He was a monster and a young girl at the same time. We received a stipend from the crown after surviving the wave of destruction. I used the money to participate in a lottery game where you choose a monster egg from a crate, set price without knowing what kind of egg you're going to get. Philo was a monster that hatched out of the egg, but for some reason, she eventually acquired the ability to transform into a young human girl with small angel wings on her back. When she was in human form, she looked like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl of 10. Her hair was glossy and smooth. Her eyes were clear, like the blue, and blue like the sea. Her skin white like snow. She looked like a foreign pop idol who ran around barefoot, snapshot, and carefree of. One look at her face, and you knew she was naive and carefree as they come. Her innocent face and expressions, and her absurd, playful antics always cheered me up. Sometimes she took things too far. It could be irritating, but even that could be enduring. Her real form was a filial queen, Lolials were giant birds like creature monsters with the vergent of pulling heavy objects like carriages. When raised under certain mysterious conditions, they can mature into Filolial queens. She was much bigger than I was in was when I was when I'm in her Filolial queen form, and she looked something like a mix between an owl and a penguin. Filolials were giant birds, but for all the power they held in their legs, they were unable to fly. It might help to think of them as the world's equivalent of ostriches. Her feathers were mostly white, though there were patches of pink here and there. There's one thing immediately noticeable about her that differentiated her from the other Filolials. She had a giant feathered crest that rose vertically from the top of her head. When she was in her human form, it manifested as a huge cowlick on her hair. It was very distinctive and memorable. It was her trademark. She looked like she was around 10 years old, but if you don't take her seriously, you'd end up with a lot of pain. She was very quick on her feet and much stronger than she looked. I'd grown to trust her with my life. As for levels, I was level 73, Reptalia 75, Philo 76. Those two were my only party members, my only real friends. To be honest, I was starting to think that I needed to recruit someone else. If it were just a game, then we should have been able to overcome any difficulty by leveling up enough to overpower the enemy. This was reality, albeit a different one than I was accustomed to. No matter how high the levels got, we were eventually going to need another pair of hands. How should we prepare for the next wave? I think we need to find another party member. What about Melty Chan? She proved herself powerful during the time we spent together. Melty. Sure, she's powerful enough, but I don't think we can commandeer her for her own purposes. Melty was Phila's friend, and also the Princess of Melamar. A lot happened, and we ended up fighting with her for a time, during which she demonstrated the powerful fighter she could be. But the waves were dangerous, and it didn't make sense to put the heir of the throne in line of fire. Oh, that reminds me. I mentioned that I framed for a crime. Melty had actually had a lot to do with that. But to explain, I need to go back, tell you a bit more about the country that summoned me into this world, Nelremark. Nelremark had a religious vendetta against the Shield Hero. The national religion was called the Church of the Three Heroes. They worshipped all the heroes aside from the So, citizenry had always equated to Shield Hero with villainy and deceit. Now you might be wondering why the rebellion like that would even exist. Roots lie in Melmark's whispered human supremacy and the oppression of the demi-humans that it accompanied. As you might expect, there were countries that embraced the opposite of the philosophy. There were demi-human supremacist countries out there too, places where humans faced unjust discrimination. Melmark had a long history of war with one of those countries, where the demi-human population had long worshipped the shield hero among the other gods of the pantheon. When I was summoned to Melmark, the king who was serving at the time immediately discriminated against me, and then saw to it that I was framed, persecuted, and sent out in the streets penniless, alone. But a royal conspiracy alone isn't enough to explain everything that happened next. The world currently under an essential threat of impending waves and destruction. There was no time to spend dilly-dallying on how to treat the shield hero. The ruler of Melamark was not the king, but the queen. The queen sent Melty to intermediately between myself, the shield hero, and her father, the king. Melamark was traditionally Metrial country. All the true power lay with the queen. When all this happened, the queen was traveling along on diplomatic missions, trying to relay desperate nation of the world against the threat of the waves. It was a practically perilous time for diplomacy. Realizing the threat of the waves and need to call the heroes, an international agreement had been reached. The heroes would be summoned by mutually, mutually agreed upon country. But in the queen's absence, the king had teamed up the Church of the Three Heroes and summoned the heroes to Melremark without conferring with the international body. Understandably, this act of defiance angered the rest of the world. The queen had her hands full simply trying to prevent the outbreak of war, which seemed imminent. Were it not for the efforts of the queen, whose those dark days, Melremark probably no longer exists, sovereign nation. At the time, Raftalia and I had no way to know what was really going on. After surviving the first wave, we slowly saved money by selling various trinkets. That was the only way to secure the funds necessary to update our equipment from what we had started with, which wasn't anywhere near powerful enough to ensure our survival. Our traveling merchant life was boring, had plenty of advantages. Of course, I hid my identity as the shield hero and instead called myself the saint of the bird god. As Philo was pulling my carriage, she really stood out in the crowd. Citizens actually started to respect the saint of the bird god. Eventually able to secure better tools, materials, and equipment through my mercantile efforts, and in the end, we managed to become at least as powerful as the other heroes. But the Church of the Three Heroes didn't like the idea I was traveling under a pseudonym. The other three heroes had caused some trouble on other travels, and it was starting to foment doubt among the populace. Realizing the status of the national faith might be soon shaken, the church decided to become an active player in the events unfolding in Melmark. They concocted an elaborate plan to tarnish my reputation further. I was accused of kidnapping the very princess the queen had sent to repair the strained relationship between the king and I, heiress of the throne, Melty. Crown sent the other three heroes to bring us back, and a while fled from the attempt to prove our innocence. Along the way, we ran into all sorts of trouble, battled the very same nobleman that had once imprisoned and tortured Raftalia. We had taken down a massive monster that he had released from its magically sealed prison. There's more. He ended up running from the Queen of Philolials after the fight, and finally, after smoke had cleared, the church decided to dispense with its shadowy operations and came at us directly. They called it a holy war, and they were out for blood. At the end, I was forced to use my last resort. The cursed dark side of my shield contained an unbelievable power, and I used it to destroy the head of the church itself, the high priest. At last, my innocence was proven to the queen returned to the country and heavily punished her husband, the king, and Melty's bitch of an older sister, one who originally framed me. She had their name officially changed to Trash and Bitch. At long last, things were said should have been were as they should have been from the very start. I was considered an equal among the other three heroes, and my actions were officially supported and sanctioned by the crown. Finally, we were free to dedicate our efforts to fighting of the waves. So I thought. It wasn't long before new problems started showing up. Why did they have to be our enemy? I wanted to invite them to join our party. I know how you feel. They were very powerful and kind. They were the kind of people you could have depended on. Yeah. On the ocean voyage to Calmira, islands, we had coincidentally shared a room with two other adventurers, Ark Berg and Teresa. Ark seemed like a really nice and dependable older brother type of guy. He was very experienced in battle. He was considerate, and he is fun to be around. To be honest, didn't hate him. Teresa was very skilled with magic. Because of my party didn't have a lot of back row support, he was very valuable and asset during the time we spent together. Both of them an extremely powerful comparison to other adventurers I'd met. But in the end, they turned out to be compatriots of the enemy we met in the end of the third wave of destruction. A mysterious woman by the name of Glass. During our exploration of the islands, we found an underwater temple. Venturing inside, we found a dragon hourglass. A mysterious object counted down from time of the next wave and destruction appeared. The wave came after a large battle, fought an interdimensional whale, which was the wave's boss monster. Immediately after the monster fell, L'Arc and Teresa turned on us. The battle was one of attention, ended with their retreat. I don't know who would have won had we continued the fight. So we survived another wave, but the mystery at the core of the phenomenon only grew deeper. When Lark and Teresa retreated, they disappeared into a dimensional rift that occurred during the wave. I tried to follow them, but we were too late. What were the waves? When I first arrived in the world, I thought they were a phenomenon where endless waves of monsters poured from dimensional rifts. But after listening to things L'Arc and Glass had said, I wasn't sure they were natural phenomenon anymore. They had to be something else. L'Arc and the others made it clear that in the end, the goal of specifically kill the heroes. There's no point in worrying about it. Go kill someone time at the market. Good idea. Stuck on calamari for time being. Storm at sea would calm down eventually. The massive monster boss we defeated out at sea had already been hauled back to the island. The monster was an interdimensional whale. The thing was so massive I wasn't going to be able to use any of it for materials until the villagers on the island managed to break it down bit, and apparently it's going to take a while. Look, Mr. Naofumi, they're selling accessories. Oh yeah. I looked over to the shop, indicating that, and could hardly believe my eyes. The hell? Prices were absurd. I that merchants want to get what they can from their customers. There have been some standards. I glared at the shopkeeper. He had set the prices up to say, double the market value. I could overlook that. Have to expect that sort of thing in the tourist areas. But did he really think he was going to get away with charging 4 times the market value? Hey. Yes, step right up. What can I do for you? Don't you think your prices are a little too high? Pointed at the necklace hanging from the rack behind him. Dummy sapphire necklace, magic plus quality poor, concealment normal. Had been here in Melmarmark, every one of his items would have been considered terrible in their prices class. This guy even used concealment magic on his items to hide their inferiority. Didn't look closely, would have thought it would be pretty good. The prices were set so high, he was charging prices higher than even most expertly crafted accessories could command. 4 times higher. I'm all for getting what you can out of customers. There has to be a limit. I looked over at his other accessories to make sure that his pricing was consistently crazy, and it was. He could scam people if he really wanted to, but I wish he could do a better job of it. Please, understand. Prices are a result of our isolation. Islands are far off from the main continent, so the prices need to be a bit higher to pay for the shipment. Little higher. That way of you used to why you use concealment magic for them? Well, this is a business. Importing the materials cost me quite a lot. Didn't like the look of his face. Going to try and play innocent. He thought I was just another complaining customer. Waved his hand to send me away. Could have called for the queen, or could have used my hero status to give him a lecture. I decided to talk to him as a fellow businessman instead. You ever heard of this guy? I flashed I flashed the accessory dealer the certificate that I had. The real certificate. I received, though, some of the connections I had made when I pretending to be a holy saint of the bird god. That guy that had given it to me was very well established in the community, famous man. Seal of approval had impressive effect on everyone. I showed it to him. The dealer immediately reacted to the paper, twitched and winced, sort, and then he took it and carefully read it, poring over the minute details as he did. Color drained from his face. I think some of the people that might be interested in hearing about your business practices, I'm sure they may. I'll be sure to remember you. Wait a second. In a split second, he's bounded over his table and Wares threw himself at my feet, petitioning for mercy. What do you want? I'm a busy man. I took another look at the prices and realized that I had accidentally attached the wrong price tags. I'll change the prices to what they originally supposed to be, so please, wait just a moment. Don't bother. Not doing anything but having a chat with some friends back on the continent. Wait, please. I'm gonna sell them at 30% discount. 30% off those prices? I don't know about that. Nah, 30% off of the proper price, of course. Thanks, but no thanks. Wait, 50. No, 60% off. I wonder where my friend is these days. I have to look him up when I get back. 70%. I'm pretty sure he is part of the National Merchants Guild. 80% off. I'll tell him that there was this guy who used his concealment magic and terrible items and sold them for about 400% market value. Can you believe it? 90%. I'll give you 90% discount. That was probably about as good as I could hope for. Sold. There's nothing worse than building a business on the intimidation and power. This guy would use people's mortal fear to try and turn them ill. Pretty sure of that. If the Merchant Guild found out about him, they would shut him down. Fine with me. He deserves whatever he got. I'm telling you that you have to take slim margins and sell tons of the stuff. Just have to be reasonable. In the end, you only harm the industry, you only harm yourself. Have to say the same thing to a merchant who sold his products significantly under market value. Might look like what they were doing was good and nice, but in the end, it accelerated deflation. Lower prices weren't always the best option. If there were merchants that wanted to change substantially over market value, they needed to be in competition with another merchant. That was the only way to stabilize prices. Considering how far Kalmara was from the mainland, it was only natural that the prices would seem somewhat higher. From my time in the market, it didn't look like there was any other business that was really in direct competition for accessory prices. This guy was chasing them out of town, or he was cornering the market in some other way. There were no other shops offering competition for the same articles. He could just raise the prices whatever he wanted. Customers would just have no choice but to buy them. If that happened, the Association of Merchants would lose trust of the going to turn a profit, at least make sure the customer is smiling when they hand over the cash. What do you mean? Think about it. We're in the middle of an activation event, aren't we? Yes. Why don't you spread a rumor? You could say the accessories formed with ore of this island raise the level up rate of the wearer, or something like that. What? Don't you get it? Just have to spread a rumor. Don't have to actually improve the efficiency of the item. Only to spread a superstition. Think about it. Everyone that has come here to level up, excited about leveling up. They already want to buy something to help them. Same concept behind a local good luck charms and amulets. Even if it hadn't actually had an effect, wearer felt like they did. I think I see what you mean. I used this strategy in the past, and it worked for me. If I heard that a village needed medicine, I went and sold it to them. They needed pesticides, I went and sold it to them. I did the same with food. Prices were higher than probably should have been, but the customers went away happy nonetheless. In the end, it wasn't the price that matters, it was satisfaction that the customer feels when the deal is done. Merchant seemed excited by the idea. He nodded and stood back. You understand the rest, right? Keep an eye on what the customer thinks they want to pay. Then you try and get a little bit more. As long as you don't, or as long as you do that, the customer will leave satisfied. And they believe in the superstition. They're leveling faster than they would have without it. They tell their friends about how well it works. Then more customers come to you. I don't know if you could actually expect some dramatic effect or how long the effect would last. It'd probably work for a while. During the activation event, the experience points rewarded for battle were higher than usual. So adventurers on Calmere are already leveling up faster than they were used to. Once they noticed the effect, they wouldn't be able to tell what was a result of the activation event and what was due to the accessory. They would buy into the rumor that the island or somehow special, and they'd be happy about it. They went on for a while, then the number of people the accessory would grow, and that in turn would lead to wishful thinking, leading even more people to believe in the power of the accessory. I'll try your suggestion right away. Merchant handed me the necklace I had been looking at, then closed shop, got to work. Whew. Did great with that one. In the end, I'd gotten the necklace for free. Mr. Naofumi, Raftalia looked disappointed. She sighed and slapped her palm to her forehead and moaned. I guess it did kind of look like I picked a fight, just to cheat the guy. He deserved it. He disrespected the very idea of business. I understand that, yet I feel we've just led him to shadier practices. True, but that's how people work. They love superstition. The queen came walking over and called me out. What are you doing in a place like this, Iridwani? What's the matter? The preparations for the meeting of the are complete. Our other heroes are waiting. Okay. Guess I got wrapped up in the conversation. Time had slipped by faster than I expected. Queen led and followed. We were headed for the castle-like inn we'd been staying in since we arrived in the islands. We arrived at the inn and followed the queen up the flight of stairs. The other heroes' party members were waiting in another room. What would you like Miss Raftalia to do? last time we had a meeting, heroes, it had been back at Malormark Castle. During the meeting, Raftalia had gotten in a fight with the other heroes' party members. It wasn't really her fault. Certain few of them were really selfish and cruel. They were prejudiced towards demi-humans. Just because the national ruler publicly declared something had bad doesn't mean that racism is inherent in society. It just vanishes. People were mean to her just because she was a shield hero. Never mind, she was a demi-human. At the moment, the majority of the heroes' compatriots wandering around the island freely. Still, I have room to prepare for Miss Raftalia, if you would prefer it. Queen meant to imply the easiest solution would be for Raftalia to take it. This is a free time to go somewhere else to avoid unnecessary conflict. Raftalia had figured it out as well. She nodded. I understand. I'll just be off then. Call for you if we need you. Just do whatever you like until. All right. Parted ways with Raftalia. The queen led me into where the other heroes were. So ends the prologue of this book. Bit of a prologue, but we had to definitely get through some of this because, well, we needed to cover basics of the story that some people may not just now be picking up. So if you didn't watch season 1, a lot of that story elements were covered through there, with the exception of course, the merchant. But it helps show that the personality of Naofumi being a shrewd businessman. Bit of a drink before we go into the next part, which is chapter 1, 7-star hero. I was led up the spiral staircase, just like in Malormark Tower, onto the high room, impressive view of the country. The other heroes were already there, sitting around the table, waiting for my arrival. So you finally showed up, sword hero, Ren blurted out. He was 16-year-old swordsman, liked to dress in black. His hair was cropped short. His face was actually, his whole aura gave off an intelligent, cool, and collected sort of vibe. He asked me, he faked it all. Wanted people to think he was. For example, I had just recently found out he didn't know how to swim, was terrified of water. So my guess was that he tried to keep his patient or his pathetic side hidden. He had been summoned from the alternate version of Japan, just like me. In Ren's Japan, they had a type of game called a VR MMO, which apparently was a combination of virtual reality and internet gaming. He explained to the players to completely immerse themselves in the online world. Sort of thought maybe he had just come from my Japan, only in the future. From the interactions we had, I gathered he was able to exercise some degree of common sense. Still, I only say that in comparison to the other heroes. Where have you been? Demanded Itsuki Kawasumi, bow hero. He was naturally curly and looked like a sensitive, artistic type of guy. In reality, he had overcome the sense of justice, or overreactive sense of justice, pretty damn hot-tempered. His favorite thing to do was travel around the country in disguise, hunting down bad guys and making sure they were properly punished. He liked to exercise his authority as a hero in the right the wrongs of the world. He was like a famous general commander, character from a period drama. Where I stood, he looked like an arrogant prick. But I couldn't deny that some unfortunate people had benefited from his self-righteousness. The problem was that his party members worshipped him with religious favor, which naturally only fueled his arrogance more. knowing that basically were knowing they person knowing that they basically worship the ground he walked on. Suki himself made no effort to change the behavior. That's another thing about him that rubbed me the wrong way. I bet you were out picking chicks, weren't you? Probably threw themselves at you after that last battle, chimed Mariatsu. Kitayam, Kitayamara, Kitamura, sorry. The spear hero. All that you think about, Moriatsu. Let it go this. Yeah, we're all tired of your shtick. Moriatsu was the most handsome of the four heroes. His hair was pulled back into a ponytail. I guess you call it a I guess you'd call it a ponytail. I'm a guy, but I can't admit he was pretty good looking. Looked pretty easygoing and not uptight at all. If you were just going to hang out normally, then I guess he was fine. I mean, probably wouldn't hate him or anything. He was stubborn, though. Once he decided what he believed, nothing would change his mind. Apparently, he was supposed to be the most loyal of the heroes. That was true in a way, but he was also an idiot. Nonetheless, never doubted his friends. He was also a full-time womanizer. Whenever he had a second spare, he could that he'd use it to hit on a girl. He hit on both Rotalia and Philo for the first time he met them. I heard that he was walking around Kalmara hitting on girls too. I didn't doubt it for a second. The bitch that framed me, one of his party members. So of course he believed her completely. To this day, he still thought I was tried to rape her. But lately, the queen had forced bitch to show her true colors, time and time again. It seemed like even Moriatsu started to take notice. All three of the other heroes had been summoned from alternate versions of Japan, and all three of them had played games that were very closely resembled the world we are now found ourselves in. Ren had played a game called Brave Star Online, though the VR MMO system was used in his world. Suki played a game called Dimensional Wave, which he said was a console game. Moriatsu played a game called Emerald Online, MMO. But I never played a game resembling this world. I had read about it in a book called The Record of the Four Holy Weapons. We all learned about the world in different ways. What it meant was complete mystery. I was just watching the ocean. Took a seat. Very well. Storm is raging out there, so you can't leave yet. I guess we could use the time to level up and collect drop items. Any ideas? Not really. At least they seemed to understand that we were stuck on the island for the time being. So what's this meeting for? I don't know. Reasons we all been collected meeting is obvious. To be blunt about it, the other heroes were too weak to be of any use. When the battle of L'Arc and the others began, L'Arc had used a single straining move against them to keep them from interfering. He only had to use it once. Three of them all fell instantly, stayed out for the remainder of the fight. It had been some kind of lightning themed combo skill, I think. They were hit by an attack once, and they were instantly paralyzed the whole battle. Luckily, L'Arc had never intended to kill them. It had been sort of an attack that you often see in anime or manga. The sort invaded it to knock someone out without causing any permanent damage, threatening their lives. They were so weak that they were knocked out of battle by a single hit. Were never going to stand a chance of victory. Arc and Trace were both very powerful. I spent a long time leveling, powering up. I really thought that attacks that they were using were strong enough to kill me. I used the shield with very high defense rating in the battle. It had skills that had enabled me to keep the arc in place. I blocked his attack to prevent him from dodging ours, while Raftalia and Philo kept up with the offensive. But L'Arc and Therese had plenty of cards up their sleeve. For example, when I thought I had him cornered, L'Arc's scythe started to glow, brushed my shoulder with the tip. I really had high defense rating, and I'd been able to withstand L'Arc's attacks up until that point. But not that attack. That one had really hurt. Luckily, it hadn't been enough to knock me out of the battle, but he found the attack that was extremely effective against me. Might say he found my weak point and gone straight for it. It was the type of attack that turned my defense rating into a liability, a defense rating attack. It worked in dealing damage on your basic based on your defense rating. The higher your defense, the more damage you took. It was very rare sort of attack, but I'd seen it before in the game. The whole world seemed to operate just like a game, so I realized that it was probably that such an attack might exist. Still, I certainly had expected to get hit with it right in the middle of the life or death battle. For the shielder like myself, whose greatest strength is their defense rating, an attack like that can be fatal. There was another problem. I could have switched to a shield with a lower defense rating as a way to get around the defense rating attack, but then I wouldn't have had a strong enough defense rating to survive in their normal attacks. It really had found the most effective means of fighting again. For the moment, I thought we were done for. Then I realized that I could have used skills that I had, like air strike shield, shooting star shield, to prevent their attacks from reaching me. That would make their attacks completely ineffective. Still, the existence of their defense ratings attacks turned tide in the battle, and we were put on the defensive. For the most part, I could use my skills to defend myself. Then I was left with no way to deal any damage to them. Even if I teamed up with Raftalia and Philo to get some of the attacks in, Ark still had Therese on his side, and I couldn't figure out what to do. But things got even worse. Glass showed up right in the middle of the battle. Glass also had an attack that was effective against me. Though for the opposite reason. She had a defense rating ignoring attack. Both Ark's defense rating attack and Glass's defense ignoring attack were effective against me. Both of them there. I felt like there was no need for the shield hero to participate in a battle at all. Just when things were looking at their worst, we put up an impressive fight and were able to beat the three of them back. Glass was exhausted and depleted of energy, and it looked like we might win, but then Ark pulled out a bottle of soul healing water, dumped it all over Glass, immediately restoring her SP. I didn't even want to remember what happened after that. I've been able to withstand all the attacks aside from the defense rating and the defense ignoring attacks, but the newly restored Glass came flying at me with new attacks that were now more powerful than I could be capable of defending against. Her attacks were unbelievably fast and strong. They were so quick that Raftalia and Philo, despite all the leveling done, weren't able to follow them at all. Then, for whatever reason, Glass and the others just retreated. The battle was put on hold. I'd like to call it a draw, but it wasn't really like that. We weren't going to be able to defeat them. They ran away for some other reason. If we ran into them again, we would probably. Which brings me to the main problem. if the other heroes were so weak that L'Arc had been able to defeat in one fell. What would have happened if it had been challenged by Glass? Had been challenged by Glass. The answer was clear as day. They'd all be dead. Second. I heard that if the heroes died, the waves of destruction would grow stronger. If I could do anything to avoid that outcome, I had to do it. Besides, if the other heroes would start to manage for themselves, then the burden of fighting Glass and the others wouldn't fall solely on the soldiers. I looked over at the Queen, nodded in response. Very well. Let's begin the second meeting of the heroes. I, Malaria Q. Malmark, will moderate this discussion. All three of them reclined dramatically. Discussion, eh? What's left to discuss? Nafumi's the only one here hadn't been forthcoming. I'd already been getting irritated with him. I already told you this. I haven't I. You were all correct about my power-up method. All I did was what you three taught me to do. That's how I became strong enough to battle through the last wave. Already been meeting like this once. Before we all had come to the islands, talked about the various ways to power up stats and weapons. Our weapons had special abilities and power-up methods that weren't available to the other adventurers. That was why the heroes could become stronger than other people. But when all started talking about the power-up systems, they used it and turned it out that there was very little overlap. Each one had them completely different idea about how it worked. In the meeting, developed into a name calling and stubborn innocent insistence on their own methods, ending up being called off before we came to any sorts of consensus. But afterwards, I tried to reach each of the methods they had detailed, using my shield, and turned it out that they had all been correct. Melremark used shadows to deliver messages. I sent them all what I discovered. They refused to believe me. In the end, none of them were powerful enough to be of any use during the wave of destruction. There was a catch, though. The power-up methods I discovered only worked truly believed they were going to work. You held on to any lineage or lingering doubts when you tried them. The weapon wouldn't respond. Our weapons were able to turn our emotions into power. Didn't believe in the powering up method that another hero explained. The icon that enabled it wouldn't even appear on the menu. There you go lying again. Isn't it obvious that Naofumi just found out a way to cheat the system? Just fess up already. Yeah, you cheater. You'd better stop lying to us. You haven't even told us about the power-up methods that you use. What a coward. Did you do all of this just to ruin Horn's life? They were so ridiculous. Hard to stay mad at them. They were too stupid to merit any real anger. You decided not to believe all the things I've already told you. You keep insisting that I cheated and got ahead. That it? All three of them nodded in unison. Besides, your party members have also powered up. It's unbelievable. Expect us to believe that all this is because of your shield? I already told you how it works. Raftalia and Philo both leveled up faster than normal because of duration adjustment skills that I unlocked. I also told you when I finally participated in class up ceremony, Philo's cowlick responded and some kind of special class up occurred. It's true. I was there to witness it, Queen explained. From what I saw, that is exactly what happened. Something unique occurred when Philo and Raphaelia underwent ceremony. It seemed to have affected the extent to which their abilities improved. Queen had also just confirmed the story, but the three heroes continued to glare suspiciously. Why did I have to be so interrogated? Look, guys, have you ever thought about this from my perspective? What? Why would I want to do that? I've wanted to figure out how you discovered this cheating method. We need to know more of that. We need to know that. They were impossible to talk to. That didn't change the that I had needed stronger than they were. It wasn't necessary that I thought I was the best, but during the last battle I had realized painfully just how serious of the predicament we were really in. Think about this. I can't attack. All I can do is defend, right? So how do I benefit from cheating to get more powerful than the rest of you? Well, three of them looked around the room at each other. They appeared at the loss for words. They must have been desperately trying to think of something that would sound reasonable. But you do have a way to attack. Itsuki leapt to his feet and jabbing his finger at me. His burning sense of justice coming rescue. Nothing more was irritating than self-righteous idiot. Are you talking about Iron Maiden and Blood Sacrifice? Yes. You have those two powerful attacks. That should give you a reason to stop and want to pull ahead of the rest of us. I really didn't have very many ways to go on the offensive. One of them was a counter effect my shield had. I could respond to an attack from an enemy and counterattack on its own. So I could use the shield spikes all over it that would hurt the enemy if they punched it. But did that really count as an offensive attack? Strictly a passive way to do damage. Then there were two skills that Itsuki had mentioned: Iron Maiden, Blood Sacrifice. Those skills were only accessible when I was using a cursed shield, the Shield of Wrath. But both of those skills came from with their problems of their own. I sighed heavily and turned to the Itsuki and Iron Maiden works by first using the shield prison to enclose the enemy, then using the shield, then using chain shield attack to activate Iron Maiden. Doing so is all of my SP. You have broken through the attacks once yourself, so you should realize there's a serious flaw in the attack. Is there? I was so irritated with him, I could hardly think straight. Ren tapped his chin with his fingertip, apparently deep in thought. Moriatsu just went on glaring at me. Finally, reaching a conclusion, Ren opened his mouth. Preparations for the attack took too long. Exactly. The enemy breaks through the shield prison, and I can't continue with the sequence. Of course, I could just try to use the skills as quickly as possible. That doesn't do away with this fundamental flaw. So using Iron Maiden required a long, elaborate setup on my end of things. It made it easy for me, for an attentive enemy, to break the sequence. You've broken that skill sequence yourselves. You should know this. Even if I were able to run the whole skill sequence, it wouldn't work if the enemy were able to break the shield prison and escape, or worse, the enemy just broke the Iron Maiden itself. The Iron Maiden didn't move very quickly, so if another enemy scored a direct hit against it, always possible to break it the attack. What about Blood Sacrifice? Have you already forgotten? When I use that, I have to bear the brunt of essentially fatal attack, if I survive it. then I end up with a curse that drops my status by full 30%. By the time the wave of destruction actually bearing down on Kalmara, I managed to recover most of my status, but it wasn't like I could just push myself to the brink of death every time I got in a fight. The recovery was taxing and took a long time. Those are only methods of attack I have available, got both of which are burdensome, and I ask way too much of me in payment. Even the Shield of Wrath comes with use. Can't just use it whenever I want you. The shield was cursed. Using it eroded my very soul. But there were others too. What about that attack that throws back flames everywhere? Only a counterattack, and that skill is tied to the Shield of Wrath, so I can't just use it whenever I feel like it. Every time I used the shield, it had effect on me. It felt like I was going to be swallowed up by rage and misery. So every attack I was capable of using on my own was tied to the Cursed Shield series. There was no proper method of attack to open to me. If they wanted to call it that cheating, fine. They could call it whatever they liked. They were missing the point, actual problem that had yet to be addressed. It was like they brought a game but skipped the tutorial and didn't read the instruction manual. Then, when they realized that the method they knew from another game worked, they stuck with it and never bothered to check to see if there was a better way. They were the worst kind of gamer. They weren't using the right power up methods. It only made sense that their progress would be bottom out halfway through. Besides, the Shield of Wrath seems that it had to have its own power up method that I don't understand. None of your methods work on it. I can't get it to unlock any other skills. As for the Shield of Wrath, whether or not it's Iron Maiden or Blood Sacrifice, it seems like nothing I did would unlock additional abilities. Get it yet? Really don't have any proper attack on my own. Liar! Oriatsu screamed at me. I don't see any other way to make them understand, so I stood up and walked him over, punched him to slowly pulled my fist back and returned to my seat. Oriatsu looked like he couldn't believe what had just happened. He was holding his cheek. It hadn't hurt him at all. I could tell. It's exactly what I was trying to tell him. You get it now? Seems like you all think I've somehow weaseled my way into an enormous amount of power. But don't you see? No matter how high my defense stat grows, my attack stays the same. I'm never going to be able to attack. Moriatsu hadn't taken any damage. Now, if you wanted to try and attack me yourselves, I might be able to make you regret that. Want to try? Finally, I got up. I longed for all the time of three of them to shut up. Still, they were looking at me as though they couldn't process what had just happened. Doesn't matter how far ahead you are, or how far ahead of you I get. Doesn't help me at all. Only one of you had managed to power up the way I have. I think the battle on the sea would have turned out different. I already explained this. Three of them knocked out right along with the other adventurers. And the Knights by Arc races skills. Start of our battle. They just stayed unconscious the entire fight. All like to call this sort of thing a losing event. Like we're never supposed to win. How many losing events do you happen now? Damn it, uttered himself annoyed. Suki and Moriatsu rolled into You all need to get it through your heads. Ark. Ark Bird. Grace Glass came here specifically to kill the heroes. Lucky for you, they thought I was the only real hero, so they focused on trying to kill me. They figured out who you really are. Come after you. And then what would happen? Actually, already knew. Mitora, the queen of Philolials, told me. Heard that the waves would get stronger if one of them died in battle. It would only make the life harder. I couldn't afford to let. That's the situation we are now in. How do we stand to benefit from the? Obviously, you want stronger. That's you. And claim that you're a real hero, wanting all the glory for yourself. Suki was getting dumber and dumber. I cannot believe the words of a man who strives nothing other than his own self-satisfaction. Stop making stuff up and then believing it. Could have said the same thing. Still true. Deciding things on haste would only make your life harder. That's why I decided to believe as much as I could. If I didn't, then make it out. Of course, still have a healthy amount of skepticism. I realize that if you doubt everything, you never get. Aren't the protagonist of the story. That's what you said when the bitch framed me. Isn't that right, Moriatsu? Moriatsu had been playing with. So I dressed him. Think about it. When we were find ourselves and tell me protagonist. Ren, think about it too. One of us is trying to get everyone together, fight against destruction, while the other heroes just sit around and call him here. Who do you think is the protagonist? It looked like I finally struck a nerve. All three of them cast their eyes down. I didn't think I ever said that I wanted to. For protagonist status. All I wanted to say was realistic. How to deal with the problems we're facing. You think I'm cheating? Fine. Tell you how I did it. I actually used power up methods. Taught me. There. That's all. They all continue to sit there. You know what? I'd like to be able to fight for a little. Sure. Raftalia and Philo are both really strong, but in the end of the day, still only two people. If I wanted some more offensive power, ideal, team up with some you who are the heroes after all. Felt wrong. Just I could hardly imagine having. No, it's kind of seems like you're condescending to. Even if we thought, though, we're doing all we can to become powerful as. I really couldn't stand listening. And just said that I wouldn't be forgiven. Whose forgiveness did you think I needed? Well, he clearly thought doing highly of him, acting like a server administrator or some idiot. Who do you think needs to be doing the forgiving here? Cast his eyes coming uncommunally at the tabletop. Just realized how ridiculous he just let himself get emotional. How powerful you are. Give me a reason to listen. Rebel. I assume that you still have some secrets you haven't shared. Sighed and looked. Guess he hadn't been. Just let his emotions slip for. met people like him before. It was like you were came across a rare, powerful weapon. Because they had the weapon, they were able to fight monster bosses that would normally be inaccessible to someone their level. People would see that and think they were cheating. They would run and tell the knew about it because I manager of a pretty big guild. He had a stash of rare items reserved for any time to open your eyes. I'm telling you the whole time. I know it sounds sentimental, but it's true. Actively make it work. Belief is power. Like this. You think sitting there and lecturing never let up. I glare at them. Weak enough for a lecture. Stop acting like weak. Playtime is over. Figured they were respond. I try to push them into considering conversation more serious. I refuse to speak with you further. Coward. They all jumped to their feet, shouting, and then the queen used her magic to form a massive ball of ice, dropped it on the table. It was very loud and control yourselves. This any time for infight. Whatever. Why should we listen to someone who would team up with it? Ren glared angrily at the floor, and the queen seemed to have had enough. My country will do all it can to help you heroes become as powerful as necessary to battle these waves. Please regain your senses. Really unbelievable. How long were they going to keep up this temper tantrum? I sympathized with that various power up methods aside for the moment. I'd like to discuss the enemies we encountered during the last wave. Good idea. Maybe one of you encountered characters like them in games played back in your world. The book I started reading in the library, the record of the four holy weapons, hadn't contained any information regarding the true nature of the waves. Rendered it pretty much a situation. But the other heroes might have known something I didn't. To tell us, have you ever run into anything like this, those three, in one of your games? No, me neither. Man fought with a giant scythe. Never even met a character who fought with weapons like that. Yeah, I've heard of them before. Never seen one. Pretty minor as far as weapons go. Lahark had used a scythe. I couldn't argue with how strange it was first. Why don't you tell us about them? Seemed like you got to know them pretty well. Before the wave came. After you three took over all the room ship, Palmyra, got stuck in the bill with the bill and had to share a room with those two. We got to talking and agreed to spend one day on the island leveling together. But you didn't know them very well. When you were leveling with them, did anything seem strange? Actually, yeah. Lark's giant scythe acted like our legendary weapons did. Didn't you think that was odd at the time? How was I supposed to know that was surprise them all the time? Been in my position, I'm sure they would have had done the same thing I did, was to ignore history until it became a problem. I don't know much about how things work in this. Thought it was weird though, so I asked him about it. He acted like it was a relatively normal thing, so I didn't press the issue. Is that true? He asked. No, the heroes wield weapons with properties. Is there any other type of weapon might mimic actions of legendary weapons? No, I've never heard of weapons here to absorb monsters and produce their item or dropped items. Apparently, Lark and the others thought it was they were using weapons that didn't exist. Weapons sound very strange and agree. Only supposed to be 4 weapon here, holy weapons. Where would they have gotten the scythe like that? Haven't heard of the other 7 legendary weapons? What? 3 heroes all shouted in surprise. There were other weapons. Does that mean there are other heroes too? Why were there constantly potential majority bits of dropped on us? It's exhausting to keep up with, after all. I never heard of anything like that. Allow me to explain. Queen's eyes sparkled based on the way her eyes lit up when I told her about the Flolio. Figured she was probably excited about the legends Elsie had once told her, that the Queen was so used to travel around the country, ancient relics. The most famous legend of the land involves the 4 legendary heroes. But there's another famous legend about 7 star heroes. Star heroes. Like the heroes. There are 7 other heroes, each carry a special legendary weapon. There were 7 of them. All of them used all of these weapons were different types of weapons. Then this world was even more than like a game I'd come to expect. In RPG, you'd often meet characters in the later half of the game would use different weapons you eventually have a need for. By judging the other heroes, I mean, since I arrived here, I wasn't sure. I wanted yet to meet a single disease crashing, and the church made a real mess out of my. But Melremark abandoned any attempt to claim the per, per, partial ownership over the 7 star heroes long ago. They have shut our eyes and ears to some of the particulars. 7 star heroes, or legend or holy heroes, are immediately intimate. They are both known as legendary. He went on to explain a legend for. So there are 7 other heroes that were summoned here, just like there are that many people from other worlds to hear. Sounds like a better deal than only having 4 people in charge saving the world. The other heroes looked away when I not exact. 7 star heroes are admiration by normal events. There are 7 star heroes that are summoned, but it's also possible for to become one. You didn't have to be summoned to become a 7 star hero. People of this world had become heroes in the. I guess they were choosing new heroes. I'm sure they would try pick people who were actually heroic, right? Weapons were used for, but in the event this fails, the weapon itself will be available by anyone chosen here. Thing like the sword in the stone. Not exactly. The sword is one of the 4 legendary heroes' weapons. But in concept, yes, weapon is there for the whoever can starting to understand what she was getting at. Anyone with the ability to wield the weapon had the opportunity and try. And if we were chosen as a hero, it would become physically more powerful, and its politicians would rally behind them too. Any adventurer in right mind would love the idea. Additionally, there are more of these heroes than there are holy weapons. Whenever conflict breaks out, chance that it will appear. And the waves come, and the majority of the seven-star heroes were appointed. It just proves how dangerous the waves really are, doesn't it? Saying that the upper class was considering the global problems that everyone faced. So, one of the seven-star heroes used a scythe. Fortunately, not. As you may have surmised, these three individuals only introduced more histories in the mix. So it sounded like, as far as the world was concerned, only heroes could use weapons the way that Ark had been able to use the scythe. Acted as though it was just everyday kind of. That reminds me, Ark said that I need to die for the sake of the world. Sounds to me like they know they might be from another world too. It me. I have one idea. Their world is on the other side of the rifts that appear during the waves. They'd be trying to invade this world for some. Suppose that would. You know what else? Glasses, weapons, gemstones set in them, like our weapons. Isn't that in our fans? Weapons like that do not exist in our. What sort of weapons do the other heroes use? Allow me to explain. Queen stood up and explained the particulars of the seven-star hero's weapons. First is the staff. Staff. The legendary weapons. And I guess it was intended for magic use. Maybe it was an ornate magical rod, sort of certain magical girl on Mr. Iwani. Sorry. Go on. The others were the hammer, projectile weapons, gauntlets, claws, axe, and the whip. Projectile weapon sounds a little vague, said raising his. Is it. You know what sort of weapon it actually is? Yes. Legends is its throwing knife, small sword, a kunai, small axe, etc. Weapon can turn into any small throwable weapon. Sounded like it may come in handy, but sounded like it could only turn into small things. Projectile weapons could overlap with its particular specialty, bows. If they were ranged weapons, there was a chance that they could be used to close quarters, hand-to-hand combat. Considering it was shield hero and I couldn't attack with all that much limitations, likely. What's the difference between the gauntlet and the claws? Are those the same? Yeah, I was thinking that too. Brennan Moriatsu asked. Sounded like nitpicking. Could understand the confusion. Honestly, don't understand very well myself. Fair. Couldn't expect the Queen to know the answer to every question, regardless strange selection of weapons. No matter how you look. It's the four holy heroes are already gotten main fantasy type weapons. There was only so many weapons they had to choose. The last one in particular stood out to me. Whip. It's an odd choice of a weapon. Where would they get the set gemstone? Well, I realized that as the skilled hero, offensive wasn't really a specialty, but a whip sounded like a weak weapon. Well, yes, I played the game once where strongest pieces of equipment was a whip. According to legend, the whip could transform into a time. I also heard the weapon could flail. Not much of an improvement on the whip, meant to be a blunt weapon either way. 7 stars weapons and categories seemed very broad. Was stuck with only his shield, so I was a little jealous of the variety. Well, spear and a pike are based weapon. Must they must be some overlap. Yeah, I had a throwing knife or small sword would definitely fit under the sword category. So certain situations look like 7 star heroes could use the same weapons as 4 heroes. Yet there had been no mention of anything killed. According to legend, the whip had special ability that other weapons did not possess. Heard that capable of controlling powers of monsters, like those special monsters Rosefield Nafumi is talking about. Maybe it's more specialized ability. Bet it's more powerful than the other abilities. I suddenly couldn't stop picturing Queen cracking the whip at a group of monsters. Wonder how it would work. Queen was sitting right in front of me, but maybe how she rolled trash. Couldn't care less. Was thinking that for hammer and the axe also weapons might be similar. Certainly weren't. Think so? So the queen didn't agree. Guess if you had always known about 7 star heroes, it wouldn't strike you as wanted to think about the flaws first. What if one of my teammates could equip those weapons? What would happen? Made me think of Philo, which made me realize something. Right, gauntlets would require have hands. Could technically have used claws if needed to. Philo became a hero. Hardly imagine how annoying she. But then I thought about it more. Kind of made sense. As for the hammer and the axe, they were similar, large and heavy, swung overhead. They weren't the same. They had different effects. That one of those 7 star heroes. They've been fighting in a place far removed from where you four have been. Furthermore, a number of weapons yet to be assigned to be a hero. Really? Yes, really. What do you think? Let them deal with it in the waves. We left everything up to the 7 star heroes. Lolios would oh, kill us, you world is too large for each 7 star heroes to protect. Of course it was. They really want to sit back and pray else would come and take care of the problem for us. Anyway, I think I got distracted for a bit there. What about the weapons that Mark and Glass were? Have you ever heard of anything that no? If there were such a thing, then it would only be a simple explanation that came to mind. There must have been some legendary weapons, whatever world they came from, but there was a big problem with here's what I don't get. When I asked Lark about his weapon, he acted as though they were a thing in the world. So what? Well, their weapons seemed similar to our legendary weapons, right? But if he thought they were normal, does that mean the legendary weapons are normal back in their world? Queen and the other 3 heroes fell silent and thought. What if everyone on the other side of the rifts had weapons, our legendary weapons? If that were true, we would never stand a chance again. If they came to attack us in the world in earnest, After all the leveling and powering up I'd done, I had only managed to hold my own against the battle. If everyone from their world was as powerful as glass, have a hope of winning. See what you mean? The enemy we face is truly that powerful. We have to put an end if possible. I agree. Perhaps it's best heroes underwent some formal battle training. The other three heroes didn't look too excited by the prospect of training. Of course, they would hate it that wanted to hang out and have fun, have the citizenry praise them for their deeds. They didn't want to do anything as dry and boring as training. The next wave will be upon us before long. We must all do what we can to prepare for that arrival. Mr. Irwadi, trust will assist the other heroes in their preparations. I wasn't too confident to be able to make such progress with them. At the very least, we could get some practice and sessions in. If I just kept telling them the same things over and over, maybe they would eventually be able to wrap their little minds around it all. Maybe. Regardless of my life, it would be harder if they died. So, in my own self interest, to see that they are strong as possible going into the wave. In the meantime, I will gather many knights, powerful adventurers I can. Hopefully, they will be able to assist in your efforts. Thank you. You'll be a big help. Last battle against Glass and the others. If you hadn't stepped in when you did, who knows what might have happened. Middle of the battle, when Glass and the others were staring, staring down and planning our next move, Queen threw a floating barrel of Ricole fruits at them. Ricole were like very common globs of alcohol, and really threw them game off, giving an advantage to drive. That was an excellent idea, but it wasn't mine. It was one of Mr. Kurasumi's party members' ideas. Her name is Risha. If it weren't for Risha, who knows where we would all be now. We owe her a debt of gratitude. Really? Suki nodded to himself, seemed concerned. Risha, Mr. Kawasumi, please give her my thanks. We're only able to survive the wave because of her effort. Very well, I'll tell her that. Suki's party members were forced to adhere to a hierarchy. Risha fit in right at the very bottom. She'd proven herself in the last battle. Bottom of the party meant she was mostly treated as a slave, like a slave. I hope that this will help her get out of that situation. Excellent. Now then, until we are able to return to Melonmark, you are all free to do as you wish. Thank you for meeting me today. We had a lot of problems. Had been able to organize our thoughts a little. For the other heroes, they weren't going to get much stronger unless they learned to level up 30 first. Would deal with the experience and leveling later. It all probably leveled up significantly during our time in the islands. Mr. Iwatari, I have something I'd like to discuss. Do you mind staying for a little while? Sure. What is it? Queen caught me out of the way and just after the other heroes had filed out. Was it something she didn't want to discuss in front of them? What is it? I didn't want to discuss with the other heroes present. Honestly, I was planning on sending the other three heroes to another country to deal with the waves there. Aren't they too weak to entrust an important mission like that too? Indeed. That is why I was hoping to gain an assistance of the 7-star heroes we were talking about. Well, I guess that would just depend on how powerful these other heroes actually are. They aren't any more powerful than the other three heroes, then wouldn't be much help. But if I were to send you instead of them, you would have very little time to recuperate. True. Right. I could have gone by myself, likely pushed myself over the edge. Stats were still very low from the I used blood sacrifice, and it cursed me. I didn't like the idea of entrusting the other heroes with anything remotely important. There was a probability it wouldn't be a better option. The holy heroes are truly weaker, 7-star heroes. They will lose their respect of the people, regardless. Can't allow Melmark to look like it sent fake heroes to assist other countries. Of course not. As for the 7-star heroes, I have seen them before. What I want, what I witnessed during the last battle wave, I think it's safe to say they are definitely more powerful than the other three holy heroes. Sure about that? Yes. Didn't really care about Melmark's political problems, but I would end up in trouble myself if other three themselves had died in battle. Made me nervous about sending them off on their own. Could have gone by myself, I guess, but wouldn't be easy. But I was very curious about what was the other side of the dimensional rifts. When is the next one coming? We'll arrive in a week. Her over here. And rolled a map of the world that had locations of the dungeon hourglass or dragon hourglass on it. Judging from the history of my own world, it looked like there's some sort of map of people made of the world when I thought it was flat. Far edges of the map were obscured with ornate pictures, way to indicate they didn't have any information past the depicted areas. Will depend on a storm condition, but if we are able to travel by boat, I don't think it will take very long to get there. If we could teleport there, it wouldn't be a problem. Yes, but when I think about the training that will be done on our sides, things need to be take place in different places all at once. It will split up everyone that we need. What's the matter? Original waves probably could have been dealt with by sending one of the heroes to each of the places where the wave occurred. That should have been enough to handle. But again, facing down enemies now. I do have some other optimistic views about the waves. Turns out that if you don't take any action during the waves at all, dimension rifts will eventually close on their own. Really? Yes. A great number of monsters will still come out of the rifts, and monsters will have to be dealt with. But eventually the rifts will close on their own, so the waves can be boarded before time. What did that mean? There's an awful lot to put on my shoulders. Only map plan I can think of. Teleport while everyone have Bilo run us to the country where the wave is taking place. Then when morning comes, we return to Melmark, work on training. Sounding like a pretty tough schedule. All of this was happening because the other three heroes wouldn't. When I had told them how to power up, thinking about it made me. I suppose we have no other choice. Queen agreed. I guess she was right. Really tough, but wanted to survive. We wanted a world to survive, and we had no choice to fight the waves. Victoria's words of warning turning into a real headache for me. Thank you, Mr. Iwatani. Why don't you get some rest until the storm passes? I will. Call for me if you need. I finished my talk with the So ends chapter 1. I don't know how much of this part is actually going to be in the anime because the anime ended with them off the island. Um, they might do a flashback to this scene of the meeting of the heroes, discussing this situation and having to split up and the learning of the seven heroes. Um, but we will be continuing this story next week. We will be continuing with chapter 2, maybe chapter 3, depending on how long they are. Um, this is a bit longer than we usually do, but I wanted to honor the turn of Shield Hero as an anime by giving us spoilers. So if you like this series, if you have a story of your own that you want to be added into our live streams every Thursday where we do these story reads, or if you want us to read something that we don't have here, leave a comment. Like, comment, and subscribe always. To the schedule, if you noticed, we did change things up. We are not going to be doing the D&D sessions like we originally planned. Part of that is due to my health. I will be still doing the streams as much as I can, but they will be cutting short with the exception of the storytime stream may go longer, and the drawing streams may go also. Um, but until then, I hope you all have a wonderful week, a wonderful, a wonderful year. Night.